All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to World Matters. I'll be your humble, if excitable host, Eric Kavanaugh, and with me is my good friend and colleague, Richard Kerby, a 27-year veteran of the United Nations. And we're going to talk today about what's going on all around the world. There's a big survey that the UN does each year to ascertain e-government effectiveness, how well countries are using government services online to provision services for their people. It's a great way to better understand what's actually going on out there in the real world, and that's really where this whole show idea came from, is I wanted a conduit, I wanted a forum to discuss what's happening in different countries around the planet, and it's kind of hard to get that information, so we're going to deliver that ourselves. And with that, let me bring in Richard Kerby of Kerby Consulting Group. Richard, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, Eric. As you mentioned, the UN e-government survey has been around since the early 2000s. And it's basically three different indexes. One is the online index, which looks at how countries are providing content and services and open data to its people. It also looks at the human capital in terms of are people able to use ICT services and content, and looks at infrastructure as well. So this survey comes out every 2 years now. And this year, for the first time, we have a new winner. His name is Denmark. Denmark was rated number 1 in 2018 by the UN e-government survey, followed by Australia, Republic of Korea, the UK, and Sweden. Those are the top 5. And those countries are usually in the top 5 or 10 in the last 3 or 4 surveys that we had. And then going from 6 to 10, we have Finland, Singapore, New Zealand, France. And we noticed that the U.S. is not in the top 10, which is kind of surprising. But the U.S. is actually ranked 12th in this year's survey, and they were actually ranked 11 in this year's survey, and they were 12 last year. So they went up 1 spot this year. The interesting thing about it is that countries are now taking e-government much more seriously. They're actually investing a lot in terms of infrastructure, also in terms of developing better services using artificial intelligence, cloud technology. Even some countries are starting to use blockchain to do that as well. So when we break down the actual survey, the OSI, which is the online survey index, accounts for 1/3 of the entire e-government survey figures. So it's 1/3 for infrastructure, 1/3 for human capital, and 1/3 for online services. And when we do an actual breakdown, the numbers, the countries slightly change here. So if we look at the top 10 countries when it comes to the online service, this is where countries are using online services, payment online. You can look at all the different content online. You have access to discussion tools. You're using social media. You're using open government data. You have integrated applications, both front end and back end. So we're looking at the entire gamut of online services. And Denmark is still number 1, but it changes slightly. So number 2 is actually a tie between Singapore and the United States. So those are the top 3 countries when it comes to online services. So the U.S. has made a big jump in terms of online services based on the fact that they're probably one of the major countries in providing e-services afterwards. And then the next 3 countries are actually France, Republic of Korea, and the UK. And those are the top 6. And if we round off the top 10, we go to Australia, Finland, Japan. And believe it or not, India has also jumped in the top 10. That was a major change from the 2016 survey as well. And they're tied with Italy, New Zealand, and Norway. So those are the countries that we look at the top 12 because a number of ties were there as well. And we see that it's not just the developed countries moving up, but a country like India is a very good market for the future, which means that it's not just the developing world that's going to excel at providing content and services to their people, but essentially any country can actually move forward. And if we look at the next few countries, we have the UAE, United Arab Emirates, Sweden, and Spain, and they round off the top 15. And we can continue to go to Canada, Germany, Netherlands, and Poland. And those are the top 20. And to me, when we look at these figures, obviously the more financial means a country has, the easier it is for them to provide the kind of services and content for its people. But it also means that people themselves have to demand more services, and they are demanding more services. They are demanding more content. They are demanding more ways of empowering themselves to be part of the discussion. And to me, that's the important thing. How are people getting involved within the government to provide information, to provide input, in some cases, even replace government. We have cases like crowdsourcing where people get together to do something that government is not able to do by financially supporting it themselves. And I think those are the issues that we looked at in the UN government survey, is how are we empowering people not only to have a better view of their lives and a better input in their lives, but how are they implementing the UN 2030 agenda, which is focusing on sustainable development growth. And to me, that's the thing. So, Eric, what do you think about the U.S. being all the way down to 11th on the global survey?
Well, it is kind of depressing, to be quite honest, when you consider that Silicon Valley still does remain the global powerhouse in terms of cloud-based technology. You look at companies like Google and Facebook and LinkedIn and all these guys, and they are still the leaders in many regards, but the rest of the world is catching up. And with cloud technology, you can catch up very, very quickly. You look at Alibaba, for example. I talk to consultants and software vendors all the time, and all the people I've talked to who have experience are telling me that Alibaba in particular has surpassed Amazon and Google and some of these other companies in terms of leveraging the most innovative technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so forth. So we have to bone up here in the States. I think we have to pay attention and realize that we're not just going to be granted #1 status, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think if you look at the three indexes, when it comes to online service, the U.S. is actually very well. It's just in terms of infrastructure and human capital is where the deficiencies are. And I think that's where we need to improve in terms of looking at the future.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Well, folks, we're going to come right back after this break. You are listening to World Matters. You can always email yours truly, info@insideanalysis.com. We'll be right back with Richard Kerby talking about world affairs and the UN survey. Stand by, folks. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Ken Roberts, the host of Ken's Wolves and Bears Report. If you own real estate, paper, and other assets, congratulations. Now, you need protection. We live in a litigious society. Those with assets are sued all the time. Are you next? Protect your assets with solid asset protection strategies. Contact my friend Garrett Sutton and the Sutton Law Center. Garrett and his team provide affordable asset protection services with strong LLC and corporate formations in all 50 states. Better yet, they help maintain your entity on an ongoing basis so you're protected into the future. Garrett has written the bestsellers Start Your Own Corporation and Loopholes of Real Estate, among others, in the Rich Dad Advisor series. He knows asset protection. Visit his website at sutlaw.com. That's SUT law.com or call 800-700-1430. Sutton Law Center can help you protect your hard-earned assets. Call 800-700-1430 today or visit sutlaw.com. Protect your assets now at sutlaw.com.
Have you, a friend, or family member been diagnosed with cancer? Dr. Forsyth at the Forsyth Cancer Care Center offers an all-inclusive program to treat adult types of cancer. The Forsyth Immune Protocol Cancer Treatment Plan, in a current prospective study of over 6.5 years and 1,200 adult cancer patients, has produced a remarkable 30 times greater survival statistic when compared to conventional full-dose chemotherapy. Greater than 95% of all their patients choose low-dose insulin-potentiated life chemotherapy, using only 10 to 15% chemotherapy dosing with insulin. Dr. Forsyth has long been considered one of the most respected physicians in the United States, particularly for his treatment of cancer and the legal use of human growth hormone. Located in Reno, Nevada, Dr. Forsyth has seen patients from all over the world. To schedule your consultation today, call 775-827-0707. That number again is 775-827-0707.
This is America Matters Media
on AM 1180 KCKQ,
a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
All right, folks, back here at World Matters. Your host, Eric Kavanaugh, with Richard Kerby, United Nations veteran. We're talking all about the UN e-government survey for 2018. We were just lamenting before the break that the United States is not even in the top 10. We're number 11 in the world in terms of effectiveness in using the internet basically as a tool to facilitate the process of government, basically, to provisioning services to our people and so forth. But there are a lot of companies innovating, a lot of countries innovating around the world, so it's not a huge surprise. But Richard, take us through some of the more interesting components in this survey. And folks, you can hop online and search for it, United Nations E-Government Survey 2018, to check out the details. So Richard, what else kind of surprised you from the results?
Well, I think the big surprise to me was on the Telecommunication Infrastructure Index, which looks at the fixed telephone line, mobile line, the percentage of people using the internet, the fixed broadband, and the mobile broadband. And when I looked at the top countries, believe it or not, Monaco was number one, followed by the United Arab Emirates, then Korea, and then Bahrain. So 2 of the top 4 countries in terms of infrastructure actually come from the Gulf region. And the U.S. is actually ranked 19th in infrastructure. So when we look at in terms of internet penetration, the use of broadband, both fixed and mobile, fixed telephone lines, the U.S. is ranked 19th. So the top 5 will be Monaco, United Arab Emirates, Republic of Korea, Bahrain, and Switzerland. Those are the top 5 companies with the best, 5 countries with the best infrastructure when it comes to using the internet. And the next 5 will be Japan, Liechtenstein, Iceland, Singapore, and the UK. So a lot of these countries, if you look at it, most of them are actually small countries. Look at UAE, Bahrain, Liechtenstein, Iceland, Singapore. They're almost like island states in most part. So it's easier for them to develop a robust infrastructure for the entire country. So that's one of the issues that we've seen in the results for this UN survey. And the next 5 were actually France, Luxembourg, Germany, Sweden, Netherlands. So to me, the U.S. being 19 was a big surprise to me. So what about your feedback on this one, Eric?
Well, you just made the big point right there that some of these countries do not have a ton of legacy infrastructure. And of course, here in the States, we have lots of legacy infrastructure. We have copper wires everywhere going all over the place. And we have a real battle royale going on to control the wires that bring us content, whether that's cable companies or phone companies. They've been kind of going at it for a long time. The RBOX back in the day when they had their battles, the regional bell operating companies. So there's a lot of legacy infrastructure, and obviously there's some politics woven in there and a lot of regulation too, right? The big telcos in the U.S. have a ton of regulation they have to deal with, and that's a huge barrier for innovation. It really slows things down. I think that's why the EU, frankly, surpassed us in mobile many years ago. They've been ahead of us by a whole generation for years, right?
That's correct. And also the rural areas. That's one of our weaknesses as well, because we're not getting the same kind of connectivity in the rural areas. So we need to boost up a lot in the next couple of years. And the president mentioned investing a lot of billions of dollars in infrastructure. Hopefully it also means not just roads and bridges, but also means IT infrastructure as well.
Well, it makes complete sense to use the internet for the provision of services because it's one giant shop in the sky, basically, and you don't have to force people to go into their cars and drive down to buildings. I mean, we're seeing a ton of really powerful innovation in these state and local levels in terms of government processes. There are some really interesting companies I've come across that are literally collapsing business processes that used to take weeks and months down to seconds because they're very clever about consolidating both functionality and data in the cloud. Now, at the federal level, it's just such an unwieldy beast, basically, that it's going to take longer to do that. But what I kind of see coming, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on this, is I think some of the smarter government agencies are going to be looking at what states and municipalities are doing that's very clever, and they're going to adopt those as best practices. And I think that's really going to help the U.S. do a much better job of using the internet to provision services. What do you think?
No, I agree with you on that point, because this survey is actually at the federal level for all countries. So we're not going down to the state level or even the city level. Although in this in the 2018 survey, for the first time, there was some pilot assessment of some cities, which we'll go into later on in the show. But the infrastructure itself was a problem when I looked at the data. I mean, this is, we're not getting the same types of treatment between the urban and rural area and the less affluent neighborhoods as well. So there has to be a push to make sure that we all have the same type of access to the internet, the same type of access to information and knowledge, and not just because some of us are more affluent than others, we have a better access to information and services. So I know this bundling of cable, internet, phone is a good way to move forward on it. But I think we have to invest a lot more in physically getting to a much better infrastructure. especially when you have countries like Malta ahead of the United States, Estonia is the United States. These are countries in the past that were not close, but now they're basically passing us by.
Yeah, they've leapfrogged us. Well, they figured out if you move quickly and you adopt the latest technologies, you can really advance very quickly. And I think that's something that's coming down the pike very, very quickly that I see all over the place is the use of machine learning. And I try to remind people it's a bit of a misnomer. It's not like the machines themselves are learning the way human beings do, but you do have these very powerful algorithms that can be run in parallel. And that's really the key is parallel processing. You take a giant problem and you slice it across 1,000 nodes, and all of a sudden it can be done just about 1,000 times faster. It's probably 998 times faster because there's a little bit of overhead on the network. But as you look at what's happening in the business world, there are technologies that are using machine learning to streamline business processes and, frankly, take care of the tedious work. A lot of people are worried that AI is going to take away jobs. Well, there's not going to be an AI engine doing neurosurgery anytime soon. I can promise you that. It's really the tedious, mundane jobs. And let's face it, a lot of what the government does boils down to relatively tedious tasks. And all these workflows can now be streamlined and collapsed and done in parallel, which means you can cut a lot of cost out of the provisioning of services from the government. But it's going to take some gumption. And I think that we've heard some pretty clear language from the current administration that jobs are going to be cut, and that's going to force people to be more efficient. But the good news is now we really can be more efficient because of all these technologies, because of the confluence of what I call the ABCs of enterprise computing, analytics, big data, and cloud. And I think these countries that you're mentioning around the world, they're the ones who have really taken a web-first approach to the provisioning of government services and the management of government services online, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think you hit the point right on the head, is that the new technology exists globally. And I think a lot of states are probably ahead of the federal government when it comes to providing the right information and content and knowledge to their own citizens, their state citizens anyway. So you hit the nail on the head there. And I think the U.S. is a very big country, so that's maybe one of the issues where we're not in the top 5, because we have close to 500 million people in the U.S. In all sectors of society, in terms of rich to poor, billionaires to welfare recipients. So there's a much more complex way of assuring that everyone has access to information and services. And I think this is where the learning process comes in. Even at the school level, we need to get these kids educated and be more IT savvy, and not just the fact that you have a phone and you can play games on it, but use the phone for real business purposes. And I think that's going to be the future as well. You mentioned that there will be some job losses. I mean, that's only the types of jobs that are redundant. And I think once you educate yourself and understand the new technologies, they'll always be important for you. So I don't fear the issue of losing jobs. I think that the jobs will be changing. The typical jobs where you basically stop, just check will be disappear because computers can do it much faster than you can. But the thinking process of it will always be there. So I think this is what we need to look forward to. How we're going to, ensure that we have the right skills necessary to continue in this new technology.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you know what? You also brought up an excellent observation here, which is this next generation of folks coming up, millennials, all across the world, quite frankly, and certainly here in the United States, they grew up in an environment with social media prevalent, with iPhones everywhere. They have a natural ability, it seems, to just pick up these technologies and show grandma and grandpa how this stuff all works. So I think as those folks start entering the government workforce, we're going to see a pretty significant rate rise in their ability to leverage technology. And I think that's a plus for all of us, right?
Yeah, fully agree. But I think that there has to be this kind of jump from just using your phone as a social tool where you're photographing or filming or videotaping and putting up on Instagram to my daily life, to actually using it for more business-oriented purposes. And I think this is where, sites like LinkedIn become important, not just in terms of networking and getting your inputs and your voice across. It's not just, I want to see what I'm doing today, or I'm checking in this particular casino or hotel, but what am I actually using my phone for? Am I using it for business or just purely pleasure? And I think that's the gap that needs to change for all these millennials, is that you need to start using your technology to be more business oriented as opposed to just being pleasure oriented.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I'll throw something else out here in terms of what the government does, because let's face it, the government does a whole lot of different things, right? And let's just pick up on something like detecting fraud, for example, or detecting, someone who's getting workers' compensation who really shouldn't be. I guarantee you one thing that's happening right now all around the world is organizations and governments are figuring out how to use predictive analytics to better understand where to focus their attention. And the way that stuff works is they will find an example of someone who was perhaps lying about either their eligibility or who they are or where they live or whatever the case may be. And once you find someone who's doing the wrong things, you can build a profile around that personality, around that persona as it's called, and then run your analytics on your entire set of data and see, okay, who else fits this profile? That at least expedites the process of finding people who are likely doing the wrong thing, as opposed to just cherry picking 1 out of 1,000 or 1 out of 10,000, which is not a very effective means. So I think we're going to see a rather significant sea change in terms of how processes are managed, in terms of how the government uses technology to find the people who are doing the right thing and doing the wrong thing. And that's one of those improvements in efficiency that's going to really save us, I think. What do you think?
I fully agree. And plus, we have the advantage that we still have a bunch of knuckleheads that just put this thing online. So if I'm beating someone up, I film it and I put it online, and I end up getting caught anyway. So I think in that sense, we're going to be okay. But you're right. You have facial recognition, you have artificial intelligence. There's a lot easier way of finding people right now. And I think for the young people out there, once you put things on the internet, it's there for life. And we just seen it recently with the baseball pitcher from Milwaukee who had these tweets about homophobia and racist tweets out there, and he got caught 7 years later. So once you put things out there, they're there forever.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And to that end, folks, tweet with a hashtag of WorldMatters. I'll be tracking Twitter during the show and even after the show. And we'll be sure to get your comments or questions on the air if we can. And with that, we're going to go to a break again. We'll be right back. You're listening to World Matters.
It's the all-new Elbow Room, 2002 Victorian Avenue in Sparks. Join us noon to 6 p.m. Saturday, July 28th for our summer street party fundraiser for the Ronald McDonald House Charities, helping families enduring childhood illnesses. Free food, drink specials, live entertainment, games, lots of prizes. Come meet Ronnie, April, Becca, and I as we host our first Elbow Room Street Party barbecue and fundraiser, benefiting the Ronald McDonald House Charities. Win gift baskets, bar tabs, and swag from Road Riders of Reno. Thank you, Road Riders of Reno. Saturday, July 28th, noon to 6. The Elbow Room Summer Street Party and Barbecue, benefiting the Ronald McDonald House Charities, 2002 Victorian Avenue in Sparks. If you've got a charity event or just something really groovy going on, find me at the Elbow Room or contact me at americamatters.us.
Here's a great way to save money on your prescription medications. If you take Viagra or Cialis, we can give you a way to pay as little as $2 a pill. Compare that to prices as high as $60 per tablet. These pills work for men and women to improve their sexual performance. And now for the price of 2 or 3 pills, you can get nearly 100. There's no need to pay expensive prices for Viagra or Cialis. Call now with your prescription and pay as little as $2 a pill. We offer 24/7 service and always free delivery and confidential packaging. Change your life for the better and have fun. Call Pharmacy Shop 24/7 to get generic versions of Viagra or Cialis for as little as $2 a pill, plus free discreet shipping.
800-395-6696. 800-395-6696. 800-395-6696. Again, that's 800-395-6696.
I want to tell you about one of the best kept secrets for lunch right here in Reno, Nevada. It's at the corner of Plum and Virginia, and I'm talking about the northwest corner where you will find Flavors of India. Now, they have a lunch buffet. That's right, all you can eat. Unbelievable price, under $10 for all you can eat, and that includes your drink. If you'd like to make reservations, the number is area code 775 775-797-6990. Again, 775-797-6990. Go in and say hello to the wonderful people who run Flavors of India, and especially if you have a dinner appointment or if you'd like a small engagement party, you can make arrangements. Their phone number is 775-797-6990.
This is America Matters Media
On AM 1180 KCKQ.
a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
All right, folks, back here at World Matters, your host, Eric Kavanaugh, with Richard Kerby, 27-year veteran of the UN. I just saw Richard last night here in New York, as a matter of fact. Yours truly is on the road, so pardon any strange background noises you may hear. But we're diving into this UN survey on e-government effectiveness. We're lamenting the fact that the United States did not even make the top 10. But I think there is a lot of potential out there. And Richard, I'll throw it back to you. You know, we are at a very tumultuous, turbulent time right now in the world for lots of different reasons. We are going to see many, many jobs go away because of AI, but it's not so much that jobs are going away, it's that jobs are going to be augmented with these technologies that are going to basically allow us to handle a lot of tedious tasks much more expeditiously, and that's good news. You know, I was at the SAP summit last month, or maybe a month and a half ago. They were talking all about machine learning in digital supply chain, for example. And if you look at what the government does, a lot of it is kind of like a digital supply chain. You have information and services and goods that are passed through various channels and get out to people in the real world. And a lot of that stuff can be expedited these days. A lot of that stuff can be done much more efficiently. And I'm talking taking processes that were weeks and months down to hours and minutes and even seconds sometimes. So I think that's going to be coming down the pike pretty quickly. Is there any indication in this survey by the UN and the results that we're seeing AI and machine learning really driving some of these efficiencies?
Yes, there's a number of good case studies in the report that has information about AI, also blockchain and cloud technology. But I think the issue for the U.S. is looking at developing IT-savvy young men and women. IT-savvy simply does not mean I can use my phone and play with the usual social media tools, but actually using these tools to create new applications, to create new systems, to create new knowledge. And I think that's where we need to be heading at this point in time. And this dovetails nicely with the third section of the UN report, which is the human capital. And for that one, Australia was the #1 country in the world in human capital. And human capital has 4 elements. It looks at adult literacy, the gross enrollment, the expected years of school, and the actual years of school, or the mean years of school. And that index, Australia was #1, followed by Belgium, Ireland, Finland, and Denmark. And those were the top 5. And if we continue, the next 5 would be Sweden, Iceland, Netherlands, UK, and Germany. And the U.S. is actually ranked 14th. And I think that's going to be a major issue in the future, is how does the U.S. start developing IT-savvy men and women who can actually go out there and use the data, because data is the new oil. If you have data all over the place, how can you use that data and develop the right algorithms to make sure that you can use data to predict the future, to go out there and write the right codes? Those are things we need to do, and I think that's going to be an issue for us in the future. This is what we've seen so far in the Human Capital Index. So to me, the U.S., go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No. This actually does make sense, and I think maybe part of the challenge here in the U.S. too is that you do have this consolidation of major web properties. Of course, Silicon Valley is still the beating heart of innovation in our world today, but it's really spreading. I mean, the prices, just the housing prices in San Francisco and the Bay Area are so high that you're seeing a lot of companies move out to places like Texas, for example, like Salt Lake City and other cities in Utah. All over the country, really, a lot of these organizations are moving all around. So I think that's good news. But my point was that the government has to compete with these companies to get the best talent. And a lot of times the government doesn't pay what Google or Facebook or Amazon pay, right? So do you think there's going to be any pressure on the government to pay people more to get the top talent?
Well, I think the government has the right partnership with the private sector. So they don't actually need to pay the top talent. I think if you look at the way Google and Amazon and Oracle and Microsoft, they all work hand in hand with the United States government. So I don't think that's going to be an issue of developing your own talent. I was talking more of the sense on the global sense is that if you look at our labor force now in terms of IT, we have a lot of people coming from the outside taking U.S. jobs. And I think, and the reason behind that is because they have the skill sets. And the skill sets are not always available in certain states. So you have to outsource it to other people. So to me, that's where the key is going to be, is that, yes, we're going to have artificial intelligence. There will be some jobs that will be redundant and therefore taken away. But once you are an IT-savvy person, once you can develop the right codes, once you can actually use data and predict futures with artificial intelligence, that gives you the upper hand on the next person. So what we've seen today is the healthcare field is always going to be a job for that. So and even the legal aspect, because now we're looking at a lot of new legal terms out there. If you have an artificial software in place, who's to blame when something goes wrong? So let's say Tesla, for example, or any automated car gets into an accident. Who's to blame? Is it the company? Is it the software? Is it the guy driving behind the car? Who's the insurance going to blame? And those are the things that we haven't even thought about in terms of new laws and new legislation. What's going to happen to these things? When artificial intelligence, something goes wrong, what happens? Who's to blame?
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And I think we're going to see all that hashed out in the next few years, quite frankly. And one of the other challenges with artificial intelligence and deep learning, as it's sometimes called, which is a subset of all that, is it can be very difficult even for the people who design the software to understand how it came up with its decisions. That can be a bit mind-boggling for the general public, I think. But like I say, even people who design some of these high-powered algorithms, they can't tell you how it is that they came up with the ideas that they share with the world. So it is going to be a strange and fascinating time to go through. But the key, I think, is going to be to have a new set of jobs. We're going to have a whole new set of functional jobs out there in the real world of people who manage these systems and understand them and can kind of serve as the human check and balance. So I think that's a trend that we're going to see in the very near future.
I fully agree. And I think that's going to be where the new jobs are coming out there. And this is where the training should be in place as well. In a number of countries, I've heard the same thing over and over, that our colleges, and maybe not in the U.S., but other countries, that our colleges are not preparing the students for the new IT economy. And when that happens, you have a lot of highly educated people who will be unemployed because their skill sets are no longer valid. And I think that's where the rubber meets the road, is that how do you make sure that your skill sets will translate in the new digital economy? And that's the big issue. And I think government itself should start looking at making sure that the curriculums at public universities develop these types of young men and women that can actually find a job in 2021, 2025, 2040, and et cetera.
Yeah, and you actually have a lot of experience in hackathons, right? That's one of the more popular tactics these days to get people involved in government programs, is to host a hackathon. I think you just did one recently in UAE, right? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, it was a very high successful. It was the first time in the UAE that we had a countrywide hackathon. So in each of the 7 Emirates, we had a hackathon, 3 days in each week was there. And we had, over a couple of thousand people showed up, young men and women who are not always programmers. You don't have to be a programmer, but at least think about what you want to do in the future and how to use the data. And I think that's going to be the key, is that how do you use the data? Everyone sees data a different way, and that's the beauty of our mind. So are you able to go out there, look at one set of data, have your partner look at the same set of data and come up with 2 different conclusions, and then how do you work it together? And that was the big thing about the hackathons, is that, yes, people were not IT-savvy people, but they had a passion for whatever case may be. It could have been for healthcare, it could have been education, it could have been immigration, it could have been business. So you have a passion for it. Try to understand the data, and then how would you try to solve that information or that problem using the data? And that's what hackathons are all about. You have a problem, here's the data, try to find a solution. And I think the more that these hackathons continue globally, the more the mindsets gets used to solving problems with data. And I think that's going to be the key to the future. How do you solve problems using data? And with big data, you can actually use artificial intelligence to glean out the right trends, the right practices that you need to go forward with. And I think that's where technology and human intelligence will meet.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, I'm looking through this report as you're talking to me. There are a lot of really interesting case studies. As you had mentioned, this is the e-government survey for 2018 by the United Nations. And I'm on one of the pages here, page 61. It's talking about Mexico automated SMS communications. I'm thinking to myself, you and I have been around for a while now, and I remember the emergency broadcasting system, and it goes way, way back. But it was a mechanism put in place to warn people about tornadoes or, God forbid, a war coming to town or something. And these days, you don't have to just go through the TV channels. You can do SMS messages to people. I get those messages. I'm on one of the weather apps where it tells me when there's flash flooding nearby. We really are in a new age of information dissemination. And I think governments would do very well to leverage all these technologies as best they can to inform people of very serious events like floodwaters, for example. So there are lots of things that can be done. And I encourage people to hop online and find this survey to learn about all the different best practices for using these technologies, right?
Yeah, I mean, even at the universities, I mean, you have these blow out the SMS if something's happening, any kind of shootings or something's going wrong. They send SMS to all the students, you're on lockdown, be careful, this building is off limits, that kind of stuff. When kids get missing, we get Amber Alerts all the time throughout all the tri-state area. So there's definitely using technology to ensure that safety is important. And I think that's the beauty of the data we have available today. You can track down anyone. If you walk into the subway system right now in the United States, there's a camera following you somewhere, somehow, and they can track every step you make. So the technology exists for us to find the bad guys, but also to protect the good guys from the bad guys. There's a problem, stay out of this area. Here you've been alerted. So you need to take your own measures to stay away from this area. And that's a positive thing as well. In the past, we didn't know that. It was just by sheer accident that we knew or we didn't know.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And once again, folks, I encourage you to join us in these conversations on World Matters. We're now broadcasting in several cities. As a matter of fact, we broadcast in Atlanta this past week, our show from earlier. And just send us a tweet with the hashtag World Matters or email yours truly, info@insideanalysis.com. And we'll be talking all about World Matters, as the show title will let you know. We'll be right back. You're listening to World Matters.
Reno Technology Academy focuses on information technology education. If you're an employer, you know there's a shortage of IT personnel in Northern Nevada. By focusing on IT certifications, Reno Technology Academy can quickly provide qualified employees to fill your vacancies. Their instructors are active, full-time professionals working in the IT field. Evening classes fit with a student's work schedule and hands-on instruction in their lab. When Reno Technology Academy students complete their certifications, they are ready to work. Once employed, students can return to the academy and obtain the next level of certifications to prepare them for higher level positions within your organization. Reno Technology Academy is a nonprofit that believes their efforts can offer a solution to our Northern Nevada employers seeking qualified IT personnel. For more information, visit renotechnology.academy, or you can call 775-849-4983. Thank you for helping our students in Northern Nevada.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-368-5184. 800-368-5184. 800-368-5184. That's 800-368-5184.
Home prices, rents, and interest rates are all on the rise. If you are looking to buy the home of your dreams and don't know where to start, join Doug Cowler of Academy Mortgage and Home at Last specialist Grant Brewer of the Nevada Rural Housing Authority and learn all of the tips, tricks, and secrets for buying a home in this competitive housing market. Make 2018 the year you become a homeowner with up to $22,000 in Home at Last down payment assistance. You may also qualify for an estimated $2,000 annual tax credit to help boost your buying power. Join us for our special Home at Last Down Payment Assistance Workshop on Saturday, July 14th from 9 to 10 a.m. at the America Matters Media Studio in the Reno Town Mall. Meet the professionals and see how easy it is to own the home of your dreams. Call Doug Cowler at 775-828-7006 to reserve your seat. Academy Mortgage is an equal housing lender, NMLS number 312085, corporate NMLS 3113.
This is America Matters Media
on AM 1180 KCKQ,
a Lotus broadcast station, the power of radio since 1967.
All right, folks, back on World Matters. Your host here, Eric Kavanaugh, talking with Richard Kerby. We're diving into this e-government survey of 2018. It's just fascinating stuff. And, I love the trends, of course, but I also love reading about all these different use cases, Richard. And I'm looking at one now about how Rwanda is using drones to improve healthcare. And I have to say, it's like it's shooting fish in a barrel these days to focus on innovative stuff around the world. We see all this great stuff in the cloud, and analytics, and big data, and so forth. But drones, these are physical objects. These are little beautiful things that can fly all around and save tremendous amounts of time and effort. Just in the insurance industry, I've heard some tremendous use cases for drones, because back in the day when a hurricane would come ashore, the adjusters would have to go out and climb up on ladders and look at the roof and figure out what happened. Now you just send a drone over that thing, take detailed photographs of everything. You not only save money and time, you save lives. So these drones are really powerful technologies that are fundamentally changing all kinds of different processes around the world, right?
Yeah, and the importance about drones is that they're inexpensive. So you don't have to be a multimillionaire to actually do a project using drones. And I think that's where Rwanda comes in, where you don't have access to the rural area through the roads in some cases, especially if it's a big flood, the roads are flooded out there. So how do you get medicine from point A to point B? You use drones. And the medicine gets there in time, and you save someone's life. So I think a lot of developing countries are using what I call low-tech, high-tech equipment, like drones, to pass on information, to pass on medicine, life-saving medicine a lot of times, and also to find people. So I think that's important as well. So let's talk about the last part of the UN e-government survey, which is e-participation and who are the top countries in the world. And there's actually a tie between three countries. So when we're talking about e-participation, we're talking about the following, is that how are governments dialoguing with its citizens? And that's through social media, that's through chat boxes, that's through blogs, that's through discussion forums, any types of means of discussion where you get feedback from citizens, you use that feedback to improve your services, your content, and your knowledge. And then you continue that circular event. So I ask for feedback, I get feedback, I make changes. And the top three countries are, and they're tied for first actually, are Denmark, Finland, and Korea. And I think in those three countries are also three homogeneous countries with very little immigration issues as well. So they're an IT savvy country by nature, and their people are empowered to get involved and actively being involved. So getting messages, talking to the government, getting feedback from government, then making changes. I think that's important as well. And then the fourth country is Netherlands, and there's actually a tie for fifth between 6 countries. That's Australia, Japan, New Zealand, Spain, the UK, and the US. So these top 10 countries are basically the top 5, so it's a big tie for number 5. And you can tell that when people are used to getting their information online and reciprocate online, it actually gets things done a lot faster. And also the UN is looking at crowdsourcing and crowdfunding. How are countries letting people get their information and getting back the information? I think that's important as well. So in the old days, we had a website, you had a feedback form, and that was the max. You just check a survey box and you sent it back to the government, and you didn't know whether or not anything happened. And then now with the new technology, it's a lot easier for things to happen. So in this case, the U.S. actually ranked very high. It's 5th globally in the world in terms of understanding the feedback from the citizens and acting on it. And the next 5 countries, sorry to cut you off, will be Norway, Brazil, France, Singapore, as a tie between India and Italy for number 15th.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And you're exactly right that you want a nice virtuous circle of information going from the government to the people, back to the government, back to the people. And the technology exists to enable that these days. It's amazing how quickly things have changed from the sort of forms that you would post for feedback back in the day to a much more iterative and bilateral communication channel that you can have these days. And let's face it, the whole purpose of the government is to help the people. So the more aligned the government is with what people really want, that's when you're going to have happy people. That's when you're going to have efficient government, right?
Yeah, and we can see our president in the U.S. is a big Twitter fan. So I mean, he's using social media more than any president in the history of all countries. In fact, not just of the U.S. of any country in the world. You get tweets at 4 a.m., at 6 a.m., at 2 in the morning. So whenever he wants to shoot something off, that comes out there. And what that does is actually eliminates the middleman, because in the old days, we had to hear from the newscaster what your president was saying. And now with President Trump, we just simply get the information as soon as everyone else gets the information. So bypassing the media is his way, I guess, of dealing directly with the public and getting his message without being distorted.
Now, this is a very good point that you raise, and I think we're going to see this kind of wash over the rest of our business world and our government world as well, is getting rid of middlemen. Increasingly, the middleman is going to be some algorithm somewhere. I mean, that's kind of what you see in Facebook and how they operate. And to your point, whether you like him or hate him, the fact is that the current president has no qualms about sending his opinions over the airwaves and driving the news cycle. I mean, personally, I think a lot of times it's an intentional distraction. But I can't get inside the guy's head, so I don't know that for sure. But you make a really good point that now this is an open line of communication that really was never there. I mean, it was there for the last administration, but not used quite as much or in such a provocative way. But going forward, you can communicate with people. And I actually throw this out to our audience as something to consider. If you want to communicate with your congressman or your senator, whoever the case may be, Twitter is actually a pretty good medium. And that's true in part because it's still fairly new, which means people of import often don't have big followings. You can get senators with 1,000 followers, and if you have 20,000, you have 20 times as many followers as they do. So you can actually use these means of communication as opposed to calling your congressman, which, let's be honest, has that ever worked in the past 10 to 20 years? I would argue probably not. But what do you think, Richard?
No, I agree with that. And I think the new tools today is instant gratification. So if I don't get feedback from you for the next 10 seconds, then you ignore me, and then I hold that against you as a politician. So I think it's a two-way sword. If you're going to, be online, you have to be online. You have to be committed to be online, which means that you respond as soon as you can and not just delay the process.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think we are going to see a lot more communication going through these various channels, and that's a good thing. Again, the purpose of government is to serve the people. Whether that's, to your point from last week or 2 weeks ago, a democracy or some other form of government. There's all kinds of different government forms around the world, and they're all just as valid as the other ones, really. But I think increasingly we're going to see the use of internet technologies, open technologies like Twitter, like Facebook, et cetera, to have true bilateral communication. And that's going to get people more engaged. When people really get upset is when they feel like they have no say, when they feel they're not being heard. So to your point, if politicians can use these technologies to at least genuinely get back to people, say, yes, we got your concern, we're looking into this, they're going to feel better. That's going to improve trust in government, it seems to me, right?
I fully agree. And the last section we're going to touch is the UN did a pilot ranking of cities. And it's a very surprising list of the top 5 cities in the world. And the indicators were technology indicators, content, service provision, and engagement of citizens. And believe it or not, Moscow was ranked number 1, followed by Cape Town, Tallinn, London, and Paris. Those are the top 5 cities according to the UN in terms of technology indicators, content indicators, service provision, and engagement of citizens. And then they're followed by Sydney, Amsterdam, Seoul, and Rome, and Warsaw. That's the top 10. And New York City is actually ranked 14th on the list.
Wow.
So after Warsaw, we have Helsinki, Istanbul, Shanghai, Madrid, and New York City are tied, and Dubai is 16th. And believe it or not, Addis Ababa, of all countries, actually ranked 18th.
Wow.
It wasn't a list of all the cities, but they randomly took about, I would say, 70 or 80 cities, and that's the result of it. So Moscow, the number one city in terms of indicators for content, service provision, etc. What do you think about that one?
I think that's fantastic, honestly. I mean, and here's the good news, folks. Every other country in the world, every municipality, every state can read this report. It's the e-government survey of 2018 by the United Nations. Go through this report and look at the case studies. Look at the best practices. Learn from others, right? You can always learn the hard way. It's better to learn the easy way by figuring out what other people have done. And a lot of the technologies these days are open source. I just came from the OSCON conference last week out in Portland. Open source is a juggernaut these days, and many governments are learning to leverage open source technologies to provision services for the people. And it's not free in that you do need developers to stitch this stuff together, but it's not that you have to pay these license fees anymore. And that's a real reckoning for IBM and Oracle and SAP and these other guys who have made billions and billions of dollars on closed source software. But that's all changing. And so now you have many more developers than ever before. You have many more technologies that are available. And this open source stuff is pretty robust. So I'm pretty positive on that. We got about a minute left for closing remarks, Richard. What do you think?
Thanks, Phil. I think the UN e-government survey is a valuable read, and it gives you a lot of insight on what's going on in the world today. So again, thank you for pushing that as well. I mean, I'm no longer in the UN, but I'm still a UN fan. And I think the results also show that the world is actually a lot smaller than we think it is, because technology is spreading all over the world. It's not just the rich countries benefiting from that, but the medium and low-income countries also using technologies to make their life better as well. So what the UN e-government survey actually found out is that from 2016 to 2018 as a whole, the world has gotten better on ICT. And to me, that's the important thing. And that's the last thing I want to add for this session.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Well, folks, once again, you're listening to World Matters. You can always email yours truly, info@insideanalysis.com, or just tweet with the hashtag of World Matters. If you do a query on the hashtag World Matters, you should see my handle come up, and we'd love to know what you want to know for our next show. So we'll be broadcasting every week, thanks to our friends in Reno, Nevada, and all around the country. And with that, folks, we're going to bid you farewell. Send me an email, info@insideanalysis.com. We'll talk to you next week. You've been listening to World Matters.